Anti-Islam populist Geert Wilders, the leader of the Freedom Party in the Netherlands, has won a huge victory in the general elections there. Wilders is in line to lead talks to form the next governing coalition and possibly become the first far-right Prime Minister of the Netherlands. Wilders' Freedom Party was forecast to win 37 seats in the 150-seat lower house of parliament, 2 more than predicted by an exit poll when voting finished on Wednesday night, and more than double the 17 he won at the last election. Now, the key planks of Wilders' campaign is a ban on the Quran, the closure of mosques, and a crackdown on the asylum tsunami. He did, however, go back and said that he wasn't seeking the ban on the Quran anymore, at least for now, because there were other important things to do, specifically tackle the immigration crisis, specifically from Muslim lands, viewers. And he only dropped his opposition to the Quran because he wanted to appeal to very tactical, not ideological, appeal to those people in the center-right political parties that weren't wanting to give him support. But once he made that concession, they're all lining up behind him to give him support, so he will perhaps be the Prime Minister. He is, of course, a veteran politician in Netherlands. Now, from Italy to Spain to Austria to Hungary, Wilders' rise is indicative of the rising right-wing narrative across Europe. And viewers, we have seen that narrative play out in different countries and being rewarded. So let me just run you through some of the big names that are today in power in various European countries who are thought to be from the far right. Can we put out that quick graphic on here if it's possible? Because it's important, viewers, you get a sense of the spread really of how Europe is changing its political inclinations. So Italy, Giorgia Meloni led a far-right coalition to victory in 2022. And she is in power on the issue of banning illegal immigrants. She also wants to bring down most mosques in Italy. She campaigned on the hardline anti-migrant and anti-LGBTQ policies. She is today seen as the last defense against Italy being overrun by immigrants. Spain, right-wing Vox is now the third largest national party. Far-right gains in Europe, an example of that. Anti-migration, anti-Muslim and anti-EU rhetoric. And it could very well be in power very, very soon. Champions conservative views on LGBTQ and women's rights. Viewers, let's look at another country. Let's go through this very quickly because otherwise we lose time. France, Marine Le Pen, National Rally is the biggest opposition party. She also campaigns on immigration limits, ban on Islamic headscarves and other such issues. She even calls EU human rights law an Islamic Trojan horse. She's that extreme, but she's also forging her way into the equation. Austria, FarRight Freedom Party leading the national polls. Again, viewers, similar views. Founded in 1956 by a former Nazi officer, charter boasts hardline anti-immigration and nativist policies, which is that issues around the country and of the people of that country should be given pride of place. Hungary, Viktor Orban has served as Prime Minister since 2010. There are many examples, viewers, and again, he bats for ethnic homogeneity of Hungary, so has no room for anyone from outside. Government has spent billions on Academy for Future Nationalists. So this person has entrenched himself and wants to also ensure that his ideology is pushed very hard. Now let's open this up because, viewers, what does all this mean for Europe? Does it mean that multiculturalism is dying? And most importantly, can all this be brushed aside as, oh, Islamophobia? Because many people say that there are certain communities which find it very difficult to integrate because they have a certain dogmatic view of the world. Sushil Pandit, what do you make of it? You've been a student of politics and You've been looking at, of course, Western politics also and writing about it. What's your opinion?
Yes. Thank you, Rahul. I have been tracking this politician, Geert Wilders, for a decade and a half, in fact, 2 decades. He gained prominence when he reacted to Theodore Van Gogh's murder 20 years ago, just because he directed a film on how Muslim women were traumatized in their homes as part of their living, even in Western capitals, on Hirsi Ali specifically. Now, this man, whatever he said and stood for, wasn't in fashion those days, but he carried on. He could see what was coming. People were in denial. Large populations of Europe were in denial, and he kept at it. He was shunned. He had to live in security. He couldn't move freely. He was deported by Britain when he went there to address people. He wasn't allowed to even step out of Heathrow Airport. But people relented. And today we see an entire surge of Islamists across cities in Europe that he had been warning continuously, relentlessly. And today there is realization. City after city, state after state, nation after nation across West are realizing that they are being subverted from within. Europe is being turned into Eurabia, and Western values, democracy, freedom, liberal ideas are in severe jeopardy because of a demographic assault on Europe, assault on their values, assault on their lifestyles, assault on the very civilization that they hold dear. And he has been the torchbearer of this campaign. Today, his success is hard earned, Rahul. And
Okay.
it is also a pointer, to what is likely to come in foreseeable future in other countries. It is an understandable reaction to what Europe has suffered and is suffering.
Okay, so this is one point of view, viewers. Let me bring in the other side. Senior journalist joining us from London, Hamid Khan. Mr. Khan, is this a backlash, as Mr. Pandit sort of describes it, to radical Islamism, Islamist exclusivism and supremacism? Or is it just naked Islamophobia that is fueling all of this? Where do you stand on this? How do you see this?
Thank you very much, Rahul. I believe that it is a very sad thing that the multiculturalism is dying in a different way. If you look at the entire situation, it is a clear Islamophobic thoughts, or it is a clear racism which is again growing in the West, and it is not going to last longer, but it will keep its bad impacts for so many times, so many decades. I mean, West have got rid of racism and hatred towards religion. It was West have suffered the most. If you look at the First World War, if you look at the Second World War, the cause of religion, the Holocaust, and all that was suffering because of a hatred towards one religion. And now the target is Islam. It is not going to help bring the peace in the world. I'll tell you, there are two things. Wilder's victory could be very encouraging for the right-wing people, but at the same time, it has raised the question in the millions and billions of people living in Europe that if this is the going to be the future, then what is their reward? What have they given? What will they get? What they have given to the Europe in terms of their economic growth, in terms of the contribution? It includes Indians, Pakistanis, Arabs. It is not. It could be. You can see it as an Islamophobic. I can see it against a racialism. Anybody with a color will be targeted in their next phase. So I think it is not a very good sign, although people have voted for it. I respect the people's vote, but at the same time, I always believe that this kind of policies do not have long-lasting impact and long-lasting life. Rather, it will be a very much suffering for those countries who are going to adopt this kind of right-wing ideology, because right-wing ideology brings war, right-wing ideology brings racism, right-wing ideology brings hatred, and now in such I would say multicultural and world, hatred will not be able to succeed. It will have a much less life impact.
Well, let me just bring in Mr. Pandit here. You know, Suella Braverman, who was the, up until very recently and now, of course, sacked British Home Secretary, she's heralded as the voice of an articulate conservatism. She observed, and this is what was said, that she said, basically, that she was meaning. She says the civic argument against immigration. She built that and she said multiculturalism makes no demands of the incomer to integrate. It has failed because it allowed people to come to our society and live parallel lives in it. They could be in the society but not of the society. Now, I want to ask you, this would suggest, and she is, of course, an immigrant herself, or of at least immigrant descent.
Exactly.
So, Mr. Pandit, where is this coming from? Now, is she sort of castigating herself, or is she generally talking about immigrants who refuse to submit themselves to the larger Western super culture? And if so, why don't they do so?
Rahul, it is so ingenious to hide under the threat of racism and threat to immigrants for Islamist mindset in order to castigate this victory and this response of the masses within Europe. In Britain itself, polity has begun to distinguish very clearly. We were all banded together as South Asians. Now there is a very clear demarcation between Indians and Pakistanis into Islamists and non-Islamists. That discrimination is absolutely clear. Likewise, good immigration and bad immigration. Racism versus inclusive, assimilating populations, disciplined populations. I'll give you an example. In UK itself, the percentage of Hindus is abysmal to 2.5%. And Muslims is barely about 5%, 6%, less than 5%. But the prison population is almost 20% for Muslims of all racial or nationality backgrounds. Whereas Hindus are not even a fraction. They are barely 350.
Well, viewers, look.
So those who are well behaved, those who assimilate, those who do not disrupt, those who do not show aggressive behavior, attack police, indulge in crime, drug peddling, those who study, build careers, contribute to society, are recognized,
this
and
debate
those who
will rage on.
This
debate will rage on. Let's just hope that the center expands and not the extremes, because in any society, when the extremes start expanding, then there's a problem. I think also, Mr. Khan, you have to admit that there needs to be a little bit of introspection, perhaps, among certain communities. They must also let go of their sort of supremacism or their exclusivism.
I agree.
You know, India is such a brilliant example of multiculturalism. But even here, there is now an incipient backlash because certain individuals in our community are refusing to adopt the larger mores of our civilizational ethos. I'll take a very short break, viewers. When we come back, viewers, we're going to check up on all of those laborers who are trapped in the tunnel and how they're doing. Stay with me.
Hello, Moto.